Hello, and welcome to One Nation Underdog. I'm Mark Harvey.
This week we're going to look at things from a labor standpoint, and that allows us to look at a theory that's quite different, that you don't necessarily get every day in a classroom. That is Marxism and socialism. That's right. We get to talk about the red stuff tonight. Let's just put it out there, right? Hey, it's the Communist Party, yes.
A lot of you might be wondering by now, why are we bothering learning about Marxism? Most of your materials don't even mention the Marxist approaches. This is probably true for a few reasons. First, Marxism is a naughty word in this country.
A lot of times when you hear these terms, especially in the United States, you associate them with what we call communism.
People think Marxism means Soviet communist governments that oppressed people throughout the world and didn't have very efficient economic systems.
But let's not mince words, let's call a spade a spade. I mean, what were these governments? They were totalitarian dictatorships, okay? Somebody disagreed with you, got sent off to Siberia or tortured or treated badly or whatever. And keep in mind that those countries, such as the Soviet Union, that we often call communist countries, would not have ever called themselves a communist country. They actually had communist parties. They had groups of people, and the Chinese government still does. A lot of you folks are probably like, hey, didn't the Soviet Union fall and we beat the communists back in the early 90s?
This is actually a myth. We are only still standing because we outspent the Soviets, and they lacked the capacity to keep up. Our overspending on both military and social programs, coupled with low taxes, led to huge economic consequences in the late 80s and early 1990s. If the Soviets did not break when they did, we might have broken soon ourselves.
Tonight we're not concerned about regime type, right? Tonight what we're talking about are what do these theories have to say about international business, and what have some countries drawn from these ideas in order to deal with the issue of labor, and how has it driven labor relations. And so that's why we bother talking about these old outdated ideas. Well, there's a couple reasons. First of all, many countries utilize socialist policies and or have political parties that promote socialism. And these policies and political actors affect prospects for business investment and management in these countries. And so knowing what it is that they're doing and why they're doing it affects the way that you do business there. And so knowing about this stuff becomes very important.
Highly successful states like Germany, France, and Britain have taken some of these ideas on board more than we have. It's certainly important for an understanding of international political economy and comparative politics.
The second is that Marxist theory describes trade relationships between rich and poor countries. It helps us understand the motivations of international actors and consider the practical and ethical implications of government and business global policy. And that's pretty handy. Up to this point we've been sort of assuming, hey, what's good for rich countries is good for poor countries too. That may or may not be the case. And if we look at things from a slightly different angle, we may learn something about the trade relations between rich and poor countries and how it is they may actually engage in trade. So let's learn a little bit about what we mean by Marxism. Keep in mind that Marxism is a set of theories and ideas. Marx was a philosopher. He wasn't a government official or anything like that. And so these are, and he wrote volumes upon volumes of stuff. And so to simplify his stuff in a few bullet points is ridiculous, but I'm going to do it anyway. Marxism argues that free trade and comparative advantage generate wealth efficiently. That's right, he actually agreed with these ideas, that they actually work. But the result is in disparity. And this produces a number of short-term negative consequences, violence, crazy stuff happening in your society, but maybe over the long run, there may be positive social change. You may end up with a better form of society, perhaps as a result of a lot of this conflict that happens between social classes and the rich and the poor, and those that own the means of labor and those that are actually laboring. He argues the rich and powerful exploit the poor and weak, leading to violence. Anybody disagree with that? Okay. Pretty hardcore, pretty true. Political system will fall apart unless the workers and less economically powerful are assimilated into the economic system. That makes sense? Okay, we're not talking crazy talk yet. The possibility of this happening is structurally unlikely given current trade relationships and may happen only over time through revolution or evolution. Now his theory really sort of specified revolution, but there are others who are sort of in his school of thought that say maybe it should happen, it could happen over a period of time slowly. So I mean, what are we really talking about when we talk about change happening over a period of time? Well, or why it's structurally unlikely. Look, there's rich countries and there are poor countries, and as long as the rich continue to exploit the poor, is any of that going to change much? I mean, look, if the strong are the strong and they're going to dominate things, that's, you know, it's just kind of the way it's going to be. And the idea of poor people or poor countries changing that, it's kind of a long shot. Kind of a pessimist about some of that stuff. But he argues that basically two things might happen. One is that they might pick up guns and start shooting at people, and that might change things, right? Or that we may actually, as a society, start caring more about people and want to actually take care of poor folks. Or that we may actually become less materialistic over a period of time, or be more willing to share stuff. Just think about it, for example. You know, if you would say in your community, whatever that may be, if you have a flat screen TV, for example, are you terribly worried about your neighbor next door stealing your flat screen TV? I mean, probably not. If your neighbor next door already has one, then, you know, who cares? Marx argues that so much wealth is generated as a result of capitalism, there may come a point where people just stop caring about who has what nearly as much as they used to. It may cause a decline in violence. And so this sort of ultimate form of communism that he suggests that people may come to at some point basically is an idea where you don't need a big government anymore. You actually just sort of govern yourself locally. You kind of take care of things on your own. And, you know, you share stuff. Like if I need a lawnmower, I go get it from my friend or whatever. You know, maybe I don't need one as much as I used to. I trust my neighbor a little bit more. You know, maybe it's a little bit crazy, but that's kind of what he's talking about. It's not nearly as silly as a lot of folks might argue.
You know, what kinds of strategies do socialists employ in order to assimilate the poor and the weak?
Well, first, public ownership of property. Second, workers should have a greater stake in business. And third, redistribution of wealth.
You may need to have a government, at least in the short term, get involved in order to deal with some of the problems of the poor. Otherwise, they're going to cause a lot of the trouble that we talked about last week when we talked about mercantilism. You know, they may revolt, they may get violent, they may cause trouble, and you may have to do something in order to take care of these people, or else you end up with the whole system falling apart. You follow me so far? Is this crazy talk?